Unidentified frequency detected. This is not a broadcast. It's a countdown. You have 3 minutes.
July 1977. New York City swelters under a heat wave so heavy it feels like the air itself is suffocating. The streets roar with horns, sirens, and chaos. But inside a small apartment, a young man tunes his ham radio, unaware that a mysterious signal is about to shatter his reality. Across the hall, NYU student Laura is about to face an unspeakable horror. Today, we're tuning into a forbidden frequency that shouldn't exist. Welcome back to 9 Lives of Fear.
The heat wave of July 1977 gripped New York City like a living, suffocating entity. The air was thick, heavy, almost like you had to swallow it rather than breathe. By 9 p.m. on July 13th, the streets were a restless furnace and the city's tension hummed through every window and alley. I sat in my 4th-floor apartment on the Upper West Side, stripped to my undershirt, listening to the chaotic symphony outside. Car horns, sirens, and shouting pedestrians blending into a strange, overwhelming rhythm. It was oppressive, but oddly exhilarating. At 24, I had retreated into the quiet obsession of ham radio. The soft glow of vacuum tubes, the rhythmic pulse of Morse code, these were my anchors in the chaos. Hours slipped by as I hunted for elusive signals, completely absorbed. While the city outside simmered and roared, my world was one of beeps, boops, and cryptic messages, a strange, comforting order amid the sweltering madness. At 9:34 p.m., a sudden, ominous change swept through the sky. A colossal lightning bolt struck a substation on the Hudson River, followed by another that hit the power lines at Buchanan. From my window, I witnessed the breathtaking sight of Manhattan's lights not just flickering, but completely extinguishing. The iconic Great Bright Way was gradually consumed by an inky, absolute darkness, 1 block at a time. The constant hum of the city, generated by air conditioners, refrigerators, and streetlights, ceased in a single collective gasp. The silence that ensued was even more unsettling than the thunder. It was the haunting sound of 8 million people coming to the terrifying realization that they were suddenly, utterly alone in the darkness. As the voice uttered the words,
Apartment 4B.
I felt a shiver run down my spine.
Mrs. Gable is reaching for the candle on her nightstand.
It continued.
She will knock over the glass of water. It will shatter at 9:41.
My instincts kicked in, and I froze, my eyes fixed on the darkness. Mrs. Gable was my neighbor, just across the hall. I glanced down at my digital watch, the numbers glowing in the dim light, 9:38 p.m. I sprang into action, my chair scraping against the floorboards as I stood up. I approached my door cautiously and peered through the peephole. The hallway was shrouded in shadows, with only the faint orange glow of a candle under Mrs. Gable's door breaking the darkness. My heart racing, I waited with bated breath. The seconds ticked by, 9:39, 49, 40. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ribs. Then, at exactly 9:41, I heard it, a muffled thud, followed by the unmistakable, crystalline sound of glass shattering on the hardwood floor. A chill washed over me, and the warmth of the apartment seemed to dissipate. The radio seemed to be the source of the eerie feeling that had settled over me. I hastened back to the console, my skin icy cold. The voice in the speaker crackled with an ominous tone.
Apartment 3C.
The words seemed to sear themselves into the air as it continued.
Lock is rusted, and at 9:45, the pry bar will gain entry. The intruder, wearing a distinctive red bandana, is unaware of the knife lying in wait in the drawer.
A chill ran down my spine as I realized 3C was directly beneath me. Without hesitation, I grabbed my flashlight and pounded on the floor with the heel of my boot, the sound echoing through the night. 3C, secure your windows! An intruder is on the way! I screamed, my voice desperate and urgent. The only response was the distant wail of a siren and the growing murmur of a crowd 3 blocks away. The voice on the radio, however, remained relentless, its tone unyielding.
The pry bar catches. Now.
A faint metallic clink drifted up through the floorboards, sending a shiver down my spine. The sound was unmistakable, metal scraping against metal. I was shaking uncontrollably, my hands barely able to grasp the tuning knob. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't a broadcast or a recording. It was a live narration of events unfolding, told from the perspective of someone in the future, giving us a 3-minute lead on reality. But then the narrative took a drastic turn. The mundane crimes of a city in chaos gave way to something that defied the laws of the world I thought I knew.
The shadows are migrating through the walls,
The voice whispered, its tone sending shivers down my spine.
They don't require doors to gain entry. They are the frequency, the static incarnate. They've infiltrated apartment 4E and are now standing behind the girl in the rocking chair. The girl's gaze was fixed on the darkness, oblivious to the presence lurking just out of sight. She can't see them.
The voice continued.
Because she's mesmerized by the dark, unaware that it's gazing back at her.
The apartment in question belonged to Laura, a NYU student I'd exchanged awkward smiles with in the mailroom. As I sprinted into the hallway, my heavy maglite casting flickering shadows on the walls, I was met with a noxious cloud of smoke. The air reeked of burning debris, a grim testament to the escalating chaos. Looting had given way to arson, and I knew I had to act fast. I pounded on Laura's door, my voice hoarse from urgency. "Laura, get out! Leave the room now!" The voice on the radio, emanating from my apartment, boomed through the walls, its words dripping with an unsettling intensity.
He's banging on the door. He's 2 minutes and 40 seconds too late. The shadow is already touching her hair. It feels like a cold draft. She's shivering. She's turning around.
"Laura!" I kicked the door, but it refused to budge. The sturdy pre-war oak seemed impenetrable. Then a blood-curdling scream pierced the wood, a sound that was more than just a cry of pain. It was a primal shriek of existential terror. It was as if Laura had beheld something that defied the laws of reality. I heard a fierce struggle, the sound of furniture crashing to the floor. And then a noise that I will never forget, the sound of static. Not the gentle hum of a speaker, but a deafening, abrasive hiss, like 1,000 dead television stations broadcasting in unison. The scream was abruptly silenced, cut off as if the very air had been sucked out of the room. I collapsed against the door, gasping for breath. The beam of my flashlight danced across the peeling wallpaper, casting eerie shadows in the dark hallway. My gaze drifted back to my open apartment door, where the radio continued to speak in a detached, ominous tone.
4E is silent now. The static is feeding. It moves to 4A, Arthur's room.
My heart turned to lead as I processed the words. 4A. My room. The realization sent a chill down my spine. The voice's words dripped with mockery as it announced.
Arthur is in the hallway.
The revelation sent a chill down my spine. The frequency, once thought to be just a simple signal, had revealed its true nature. It was a map, a beacon, guiding us to this precise moment. By tuning the dial, Arthur had unknowingly invited the broadcast into our physical reality. Panic set in as I scrambled back into my apartment, slamming the door shut and throwing every bolt into place. The oppressive heat was forgotten in the face of my growing fear, and I couldn't shake off the shivers that ran down my spine. The radio, once a harmless device, now glowed with an otherworldly energy. The dial pulsed with a violent, ultraviolet light that seemed to sear itself into my retina, and the vacuum tubes inside hummed with an eerie power. The air in the room was electric, charged with an almost palpable tension that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. It was then that the truth dawned on me. The blackout had been no accident. The lightning strike that had plunged the city into darkness had been more than just a coincidence. The unique combination of atmospheric conditions, the extreme humidity, The ionized air from the storm and the sudden drop in the city's electromagnetic field had created a perfect vacuum, a hole in the fabric of our world. And this frequency, with its newfound power, had filled that void. As I gazed at the radio, a surge of frustration coursed through me, my hands itching to lash out and shatter it. But they seemed rooted to the spot, as if some unseen force had rendered me immobile. The voice emanating from the radio continued to narrate my actions with an air of detachment.
Arthur is searching for a weapon,
it said.
His eyes have landed on the heavy wrench lying on his workbench. He is now just 120 seconds away from the impending breach. However, he remains oblivious to the fact that locking the door will prove futile. The frequency has already permeated the room.
I grasped the wrench, my grip tightening around it as I screamed into the radio. Who are you? What are you? The voice, however, chose to ignore my questions, instead opting to maintain its detached narrative tone.
He is posing questions to a device comprised of copper and glass,
it said.
He fails to comprehend that the voice is not that of a person, but rather the manifestation of time folding in on itself. We are the architects of the static that fills the airwaves. We have been waiting for a night as dark and foreboding as this.
It was then that I caught sight of something peculiar. In my peripheral vision, near the radio console, the shadows seemed to be taking on a life of their own. They were no longer just the absence of light. They had transformed into three-dimensional shapes of pure, vibrating blackness, reminiscent of holes cut out of the very fabric of the universe. The air around them hummed with an eerie 60-cycle vibration, similar to that of a power transformer. The voice continued to taunt me, its words dripping with an otherworldly menace.
1 minute,
it said.
Arthur is now swinging the wrench. However, he strikes nothing but air. The shadows have positioned themselves behind him. They are savoring his fear, which tastes eerily similar to copper and ozone.
I spun around, swinging the wrench wildly in an attempt to ward off the encroaching darkness. The wrench collided with the workbench, sending transistors and solder flying in all directions. The room was rapidly filling with a deafening, hissing, static sound that seemed to vibrate through every cell in my body, blurring my vision and making my teeth ache. The voice remained calm, its tone unwavering as it counted down the seconds.
30 seconds. He is now falling to his knees. The heat has dissipated. The world around him is slowly becoming one with the frequency. He is, in effect, becoming the broadcast itself.
The shadows seemed to stretch out like dark, ethereal fingers, their tendrils of flickering gray noise probing the air. Wherever they made contact with the wallpaper disintegrated into a cloud of ash, as if reality itself was unraveling. And where they touched my skin, I felt an icy chill that seared like a flame, leaving me breathless. I lunged for the radio, intent on yanking the power cord free from the battery. But then the voice emitted a sound that could have been a laugh, a cold, mirthless sound that sent shivers down my spine.
0 seconds.
It whispered. The voice had shifted, no longer emanating from the speaker. Instead, it seemed to emanate from the air right in front of my face, as if the shadows themselves were speaking. The sound was almost omnipresent, enveloping me in an aura of dread. As the world around me began to distort, my last glimpse was of the radio dial. The numbers blurred together, spinning wildly past 1977, 1980, and 2000, hurtling toward a future that felt like a desolate graveyard. The dial seemed to be counting down to some unknown reckoning, and I was powerless to stop it. The morning after the New York City blackout dawned on a cityscape marred by fire, theft, and widespread destruction. As the sun rose, it cast its light upon a metropolis that was bruised, battered, and scarred, its very fabric seeming to bear the weight of a chaotic night. In the NYPD archives lies a peculiar document, a police report filed on July 15, 1977, for apartment 4A. The report details a scene that suggests a violent struggle took place within the apartment's confines. The door was secured from the inside by 3 separate bolts, and the barred windows remained intact. Upon entering, responding officers encountered a room in disarray, with tools scattered about and a heavy wrench lodged in a wooden workbench. However, there was a notable absence. Arthur, the apartment's occupant, was nowhere to be found. His ham radio, typically a sturdy device, was discovered on the desk, its vacuum tubes fused into a singular, distorted mass of glass and wire. The lead-acid battery, usually a reliable source of power, was not only completely drained, but also showed signs of severe aging, as if it had been sitting idle for a century. Residents of the floor who had not fled during the tumultuous night shared accounts of a strange phenomenon they referred to as the static. This unsettling sound, described as being capable of making one's ears bleed, was accompanied by an eerie sensation of being watched by the darkness itself. Laura, a neighbor from 4E, was also missing, leaving behind only a faint scent of ozone and a fine layer of gray ash on her rocking chair. For years, the enigmatic tale of the radio frequency that shouldn't exist circulated as a piece of urban folklore shared among enthusiasts on fringe BBS boards and early internet forums. The story was often dismissed as a hallucination, a product of the sweltering heat and the stress induced by the riots that accompanied the blackout. In 2026, the mysterious signal re-emerged, shrouded in an aura of intrigue. The breakthrough came courtesy of advancements in ultra-wideband digital scanning and quantum-encrypted networks. Researchers at a private signals intelligence firm in Brooklyn detected anomalous ghost packets, data streams that seemed to emanate from nowhere. Upon decoding these packets into audio, the results sent chills down the spines of the researchers. The digital reconstruction of a signal captured on a sweltering August night in 2026 revealed a voice, a flat, gravelly tone eerily reminiscent of the recordings described by Arthur's neighbors. The digital voice narrated,
Sector 7, Block 12. The smart lock on the penthouse will malfunction at 2:14 a.m. A data thief awaits in the stairwell, oblivious to the static entity ascending through the elevator shaft. He has just 3 minutes left in his timeline.
This phenomenon is becoming increasingly common. The strain on global power grids, rising temperatures, and the thickening electromagnetic noise in the atmosphere all contribute to an environment where such anomalies thrive, far exceeding the predictions of engineers in 1977. If you're reading this on a sweltering night, as the air feels heavy with anticipation and lights flicker with the passing storm, heed this warning: power down your devices. Refrain from scanning frequencies or searching for hidden signals within the static. The broadcast isn't merely forecasting events, it's seeking an entry point. Once you hear the voice narrating your life, you have exactly 3 minutes to bid farewell.
As the city slowly awakens from the blackout, the memories of that night linger like a fragmented dream that refuses to fade. Laura, Arthur, and the shadows that moved through the walls remind us that our perception of reality is fragile, and sometimes what we don't see can be just as real as what we do. We live surrounded by signals, frequencies, and patterns we barely notice. Yet in quiet moments, a flicker of light, a strange sound, the hum of the city at night, we catch glimpses of a reality just beyond our awareness. That night in 1977 showed us that fear isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers, subtle and unseen, waiting for us to notice them again. So next time you sit alone in the dark or hear a signal you can't explain, remember, Some stories don't end when the lights come back on. They persist, quietly, waiting for the moment we're ready to face them again. You've survived another tale from 9 lives of fear, but don't get comfortable. If the shadows whispered to you tonight, hit like before they whisper again. Share this video with someone who thinks they're brave. Let's see how long their courage lasts. And subscribe, because around here, every click feeds the darkness, and the darkness remembers. Where the shadows linger long after the story ends. Stay scared.
The signal lingers. Are you listening? They are watching, always watching. Until next time.